"Move, you worthless pieces of meat! Move!" I shouted from atop my golden throne, hoisted atop of the shoulders of each of the 10 species I now called my subjects. I rattled the reins of the carriage somewhat, causing the recently broken-in slave at the very front to buckle and stir. It was one of those pink-skinned humanoids, this time dressed appropriately for his station. A simple loincloth, and the imperial seal seared into his front, back, arms and legs. Indeed, this particular one that now hauled me at my throne had once fancied himself as some sort of a diplomat. Quite a silly prospect, if you would ask me, given how such a lesser species could dream so far above its station. Perhaps next time I'd install more bits and baubles to the carriage, chiseled and moulded out of lead or some other heavy material, just to show these pathetic excuses for sapient life what it really means to earn their keep. My compatriots knew me as Star-Lord Yulta, though others among species would refer to me by one of my more common titles: the Conqueror of 1,000 Worlds, the Yoke Master of 1,000,000,000 Souls, and the Grand Admiral of the Visaf Fleets. I was but one of the 100 Star-Lords who had been given land, coin, and rule over the vast swath of the galaxy we now called our own by the will of our immortal and benevolent Emperor. My life had been a grand and epic adventure, from my noble pedigree to my academy days, to my first contact with the humans and Verilians and the subsequent wars that came out of their desire for defiance. The life I led was one that I was satisfied with. I wouldn't have changed any bit of it for the world. Yet in my dreams, I couldn't help but feel something had begun to run amiss. Memories of my childhood were interspersed with speckles and dreams of lives I had not lived. One as a common slave driver, another as a mere sergeant in my Star Corps, and another as an imperial magnate. All of which were mere glimpses, but it felt eerily real the more I experienced them. The estate. It was on this day, however, the 21st day of the first month of the year of our great founder emperor, Tilnar Venora, that I was duty-bound to come face to face with the emperor himself. I was dressed for the occasion, of course. Gold-embroidered silks and satin that hugged my form and displaced the toned and chiseled strength of my kind. My scales being visible enough through the translucent fabrics. There were an entire army of slaves that had come to adorn me with my elements of fine regalia. Heavy chests of gold and silver carried aloft by slaves that I cared not to even glance at. Slave artists and artisans continued to work on my body and face paint. Yet as I began to inspect the work, I noticed something was awry, something that was completely unacceptable given the time frame I had to work with. A pattern drawn just above my left pectoral was left slightly askew, imperceptible to most, even amongst my peers, but not to me. The slave in question was brought before me as I glared down at his mewling form. Yet another one of those smooth-skinned, hairless primates. This one carrying in fear as it begged and rattled on and on about excuses upon excuses. I was having none of it. We saved your kind from yourselves. Too pathetic to win a fight, too miserable to stand up against us. Too broken to even stand on your own 2 feet. I shouldn't even be bothering with this whole tirade. I practically sighed to myself as I snapped my fingers. The slave was taken away. Whatever punishments befell it was firmly in the hands of the slave overmasters. It didn't matter. Not to me anyways, as I only did it as a show of hierarchy. I had no ill will towards the slave personally, just the species it belonged to. This failure only cemented that fact. The road. The trip to the Imperial Palace was rather uneventful. I did pass by a few of my own kind who seemed to have taken it upon themselves to represent the so-called rights of these lesser races. I cared not to entertain any of them, if it wasn't for the fact that one of them just so happened to be in the way of my litter. I had my slaves march my throne over to the leader of this pathetic attempt at protest. A handful of my own kind blocking a major thoroughfare designated for nobles was indeed quite a novel sight, so I entertained them, allowing my carriage to be lowered somewhat, stretching the forearms of the pack slaves as I did so, much to the visible disgust and chagrin of the protest leader. If there is something you wish to say to me, you may say it now, my fellow Visani, though make it quick. This isn't right, the protester spoke back with an air of defiance, mixed in with an unmistakable desire to remain respectful to a figure of authority. She couldn't press this matter too far, after all. What isn't? I quipped back. This, all of this, don't you see? They're just as sapient, just as capable, just as smart as you or I. What? Did you let propaganda get your head? You know that keeping a sapient in chains, in binds as literal animals is wrong. No, it isn't, but blocking a road designated for nobility is, so I choose my next words very wisely, young one. I yawned back, eliciting a shiver from the protester who still remained defiant. You've literally talked to the last race who enslaved face to face, eye to eye, just 50 years ago. Yes, I have. What of it? Why? Why can't you see, then, that this is wrong? They were equals. I don't understand how you can just... Because, young one, that's how the galaxy works. That's how the universe works. There is a principle of nature that every being knows. It's called survival of the fittest, and this is just how it goes. The being that makes it to the top has to claw and bite and kick and climb. The being that doesn't just ends up as someone else's prey. I spat back. That's a nursery rhyme that schools are forced to teach. And it's clear that they didn't teach you well enough then. Enough to remember it, but not enough to understand it. My young fellow, I'd reconsider your life's trajectory if I were you. Now stand aside. I have pressing matters to attend to. A few aggressive gestures from the guards, I managed to persuade the young protester to acquiesce to my demands, as she finally stood aside. You still have one more chance. Please, you can still stop this. The protester promptly shouted at me, as I simply ignored her with a simple wave. The palace. A few hours later, and with the laboured breaths of slaves underneath me reaching an all-time high, I finally arrived at the palace. Upon entering the grand halls, I was instantly hit by the grandeur of it all. The gold, the fine marble and quartz, the gems and rare stones from a galaxy underfoot. The chamber immediately preceding the Emperor's own throne room was perhaps the most impressive of all, however. There I encountered relics of the lesser species civilizations, each one corresponding to a torn and ripped up flag behind them, the last and only vestiges of their culture allowed to survive. Now all but decorations with their meanings, their cultures, their creeds and ideologies, all but lost to the sands of time. Entering the throne room, I immediately knelt down to one knee, as the Emperor sat atop of a throne that was shrouded in thick and translucent draperies. My Emperor, I am here as my duty entails, I humbly spoke, as a rough cough alerted me to the beginnings of the Emperor's response. Ah, what is it your name is this time around? I put my brow at that throwaway statement. This time around, what could he mean by that? Perhaps he had just met several more Star-Lords and confusion was starting to set in. I am Star-Lord Jollet, Your Excellency, I proclaimed. Ah, Jollet. So, how do you think you've done in this life, The Emperor continued, his voice echoing throughout the halls in an off-putting, almost ethereal manner. I ignored those vague comments and interpreted them as perhaps just the poetic nature of a man wise and beyond his years. I believe I have done well, Your Excellency. I have served the Empire to the best of my abilities. I have raised worlds as you have requested. I have commanded fleets to subdue unruly worlds, and even brought down the human-Aurelian alliance that once stood in our way, that once challenged our ways. I brought that pesky diplomat Arthur Nelson to heel, and he remains still in my litter to this day. I have ensured that our people will continue forth unimpeded, unchallenged, as we prepare for our next prize, Andromeda, Your Excellency. My voice grew stronger and louder with pride with each passing word. And any regrets? Anything you wish you could have changed? The Emperor responded, ambivalently. No, Your Excellency. Perhaps I should have been stricter against the Aurelians. I did request a full bombardment of their worlds to desaturate their population, but Trade Minister Vesa wished to enslave the race as we had done the humans, so I was forced to soften my hand in that regards. There was another pause as a loud, almost impossibly reverberant sigh echoed through not just the hall, but my own mind as I took a few steps back in shock. The veil that had obstructed my view of the Emperor soon parted, revealing a human which sat, legs hanging from a throne clearly designed for a Visani, not a being of that diminutive strength and stature. What is the meaning of this? Guards! I shouted, looking over my shoulder to see nothing. What had been a cavernous hall of marble, gold and stone had now become nothing. Nothing but a white void that didn't even feel hot or cold to the touch, but just felt empty. What? And that is iteration 921525001 of subject Captain Yelta Arenas. The program will now cease, the human spoke, as the last vestiges of the Grand Palace seemed to apparate into nothing. Nothing but a white void filled the space around us, as the human took petite steps forwards towards me. What is the meaning of this? I shouted back, stepping back, instinctively, and against my better judgment. Oh, relax. We've been through this over 900,000 times now, Captain. Captain? My title is Star-Lord, and Sergeant, and Slave Overseer, and Director, and CEO, and... Do you want me to keep rattling on? Star-Lord has been your best run yet, let me tell you that. Best as in most successful. Though probably worst in terms of your moral and ethical character index reports. Sad. Disappointing. I half expected you to turn over a new leaf when your wife died. Talana? Yes. I thought that perhaps her sympathies towards the downtrodden would have awoken something within you. Didn't expect you to simply act as if everything was just back to business as usual after that, though. I mean, we gave you so many lifelines in this one, Captain. Seriously, you could have scored so much better. I'm starting to believe that you really are incapable of compassion and morals and ethics, and I'm one to talk. The human continued rattling on as I finally had enough, growling at her as I reached out a claw to strike her, only to find my hand disappearing into nothing on contact. Hey, stop that! I'm seriously trying to help here, and this isn't helping matters. Honestly, I've tried. I can't really give you any more information on the proceedings outside of the non-specifics, but I'm honestly on your side here. Humanity is not anything if not forgiving and merciful. I began to panic, attempting to run, to just move away from the human's general direction, sprinting my way this way and that, only finding more of that white void, and more of my form disappearing into the ether. What sort of twisted game is this? I shouted back at the human, who once again manifested before me without warning. It's not a game, Captain. Like I said, it's a trial. We take you, the core of what makes you, you, and we run it through different permutations, seeing if perhaps your prior crimes were a result of environmental factors. We modify every potential variable and run you through every potential permutation of what your life could have been like. You might have noticed some bleed over in your dreams. Very common, an unintentional and unavoidable side effect of the technology. But I digress. We give you a chance to prove that perhaps the crimes in your life weren't entirely your fault. Indeed, we're doing this with... sorry, I've spoken too much. Regardless, Captain, it's clear that you've not only proved us wrong this time around, but you've outdone yourself too. Billions killed and enslaved in your name? That's not a good look, Captain. I could only glare back in abject fear, as I felt more and more of myself slipping. All that was left of me was a torso and a head, looking dead on at eye level with this diminutive human. Don't worry though, we'll give you another shot. This time, I'll just let the algorithm decide what you're going to end up with being this time around. Until we meet again, Captain. It was with that the human disappeared, as well as my own sense of self. All that was left was an endless void and my memories to preoccupy me. What crimes had I committed that had forced me into such a sorry state? And then it hit me. Memories of my prior, real life. A captain of the Venari mercenary fleet, leading raids on human settlements, and various other aliens. I saw the blood, the viscera, the suffering, and then it clicked. This was all an elaborate attempt to see if I was worthy of leaving that life behind. I cried out in despair, calling out for that human, desperately shouting into the void with only my thoughts. Yet as time pressed onwards, so too with my consciousness, as I felt myself slipping into a deep sleep. I tried to fight it, tried to resist it, but nothing worked. In the end, I was left with those final few words. Not from the human, but that protester, if she'd even existed in the first place. You still have one more chance. Please, you can still stop this. I wish I'd taken that chance. Luna, Havenport Xeno Studies Institute. Rows upon rows of servers hummed in the large, expansive room that was half submerged in the coolant necessary to maintain this operation. Above the submerged electronics was a single chair facing a window, which housed a small team of scientists busy at the controls. Any luck with the captain? A voice hollered over the intercom, causing me to stir in my seat as I removed my direct neural interfacer from my head. Ugh, no. That's a shame. Don't worry though, he has a few more tries left. This time he's going to be... Seems like the algorithm's having him start off his life at one of the Empire's outer rim worlds. Born to a miner and a truck driver, it seems. Let's see how this one pans out. Hopefully better than his latest run, because my god. Yeah, let's not talk about it. I need a long fucking shower after that. How many did you interface with today? 5,000, give or take a few. They all blend together after a while, thank god for the clock cycle. If it wasn't for that, we'd be here for days, weeks without sleep. Definitely, well, just get yourself sorted quickly. I want to clock out as soon as possible. A silence once more hung over the room, leaving only the constant background noise of coolant pumps and the occasional thunk of machinery to fill in the awkward silence. I took this opportunity to begin wrapping up for the day, packing up the neural interfacer into its container, and running some last-minute diagnostics.